Ships or Shipsy? Only you can decide. Find out more at shipzorz.com. Good morning, everybody, and happy Tuesday. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, and this is Thoughts and Coffee, coming to you live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. We are coming at you live, and we are excited for you to join us today. So before we bring up our guests, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's coming up this week on Let's Talk Supply Chain. So the episode that came out yesterday is called Oh Canada, Going Global Has Never Been Easier. And my guest, Zishan, he's a really good friend of the show, really good friend of mine. And he came on the show to talk all about what they're doing at Export Development Canada to help you go global so much easier. I mean, it's so important to take a look at new markets and new opportunities right now. And this discussion is not just for Canadians, it's for everybody in talking about what you need, what resources, that kind of thing. So go and check that out. That's episode 149, wherever you subscribe to the podcast. And we also have a brand new mini series with Ayanna about intermodal. What does intermodal mean to you? This is the second episode where we talk about the equipment and how important the equipment is in the intermodal industry, safety concerns, what that means to you on the roads. And so if you haven't checked it out, go and check it out wherever you subscribe to Let's Talk Supply Chain. It's episode 148. And lastly, we've got a brand new diversity and inclusion show called Blended. And last week we released episode 1, which is What's in a Word. And it's a round table talk. It's myself with 5 other people from different walks of life in supply chain. And we talk all about what the words we can use, what words can't we use, what words should we be using. And it's a really great discussion. We're getting some really, really good feedback. So go and check that out again, wherever you subscribe to the Let's Talk Supply Chain podcast or under podcasts at letstalksupplychain.com. And now for the question of the week, let's bring up Audrey. I think she's just about to take a sip of her coffee.
Usually. All the time.
I did try to give you some notice. Well, before we get into the question of the week, I mean, we got to talk about my shirt. So Audrey and I decided that I wanted some new wardrobe because I was getting tired of the same old shirts. And so I went and bought a couple of shirts. And the other day, Audrey and I got on Zoom just to test out how mirror ball this shirt actually is. So it's a party here on Thoughts and Coffee this morning. Yeah. And we're glad that you're with us. I'm mirror ball. Audrey is cheetah. And we're just having some fun here. So Audrey, why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, for those who don't know me yet, I seem to be all over everywhere, but I'm Audrey Ross. I'm a logistics and customs specialist at Orchard Custom Beauty. So I handle the international trade piece, the customs compliance piece, sometimes international tax just for fun. And what else do I do? I do other stuff. Volunteer.
You do lots of other stuff. You're like the supply chain expert.
Yeah.
And you join us here every other week, which is cool.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the question of the week. So the question of the week, we actually post on all of our social media every Wednesday morning. And so to reveal the question of the week that is coming up for tomorrow and just talk about it a little bit. So the question is going to be, if you could sit down and interview one person in supply chain, who would it be? So who would it be for you?
There's so many people.
I know. Well, I'll tell you mine first, and then you can kind of think about it. So I want to interview Jessica Alba. And I
Oh,
know she's
yeah.
not really a face in supply chain, but I've always said that I would love to interview Jessica Alba just because of the Honest Company. I want to see
Mhm.
how they started out, what the supply chain looked like at the beginning, how it looks like now, because obviously all of the changes with e-commerce, plus they've gotten huge with the Honest Company. And so I just want to sit down and sort of talk to her about Honest and how they figure out their supply chain and what they did and all that kind of stuff. So that's the one for me.
But she's such a success story too. I mean, it went
I
from
know.
this like, oh, she's starting some celebrity brand to this just massive, um, just massive influence and reach. And the reviews and the customer loyalty is just so strong for a company that really, I mean, I think it's about 10 years now. But I just remember when it first came out, it was like, oh yeah, sure, like celebrity starts a thing. And then it's like, she must have really thought this through or hired some really good people because it has just blown up. So I use their body wash and hair
Nice.
shampoo right now. Yeah.
So who would you want to talk to?
Oh my gosh, there's so many people to talk to. That's what's
I
great.
know. I know.
Gosh, there's people who you're just so curious, like you kind of want to pick their brains, like how did this start or how did this happen?
Yeah.
Um, I think we get a lot of interviews with some of the bigger. You see a lot of interviews with the big carriers. Um, Yeah, I'd like to. I told you about her the other day. I think it's Fraser, Tara Fraser from
That. Look, it
the
says LinkedIn
airline.
user. Love seeing
Yeah,
my trade besties live. Do you think that's Emiliano?
I wonder if it is.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was like, who is that? Anyways,
It's gotta be.
it's got to be.
It's gotta be. So yeah, I would.
So,
I love Miliana. It's got to be Tara Fraser, who is she sort of started this. It's a small
yes.
airline, but it's called Iskru Air, out on the west coast of Canada. So I would be very curious as to like, because starting an airline is like it seems daunting, seems
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I've seen a couple of interviews with her where she spoke about just the absolute gap that was there.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested to see sort of how she kind of like figured out getting that first plane and getting the next one and just getting started and what her plans are
That's
for
awesome.
growing.
Well, I am
Yeah.
trying to, I'm trying, oh, thank you, Devin. Yes, it was Emiliano. Thank you. I don't know why sometimes it shows like LinkedIn user and it doesn't show the
Yeah.
person's name. I
And our
have no
tendency is
idea.
to assume LinkedIn user is John Puglino. So it's
There
good
you
to
go.
know that not all of them
It's good.
are.
It's good. Emiliano, this does change. You might
Yeah.
want to ask John how he got it to change because John Baglino used to show up as LinkedIn user as well.
Mhm.
So I don't
Oh,
know what's happening.
LinkedIn.
Oh, well, I can tell you. So LinkedIn again has failed to post this thoughts and coffee onto my personal page as well. So I don't know what's happening. We're gonna have to try to fix
Yeah.
that one for next week. But I'm gonna try to have her on a blended episode as well. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see if she comes back to me for that. So let's talk next about my thoughts and coffee post. So
Yeah.
on Sunday, I just got a little bit. I saw an Instagram post from Sarah Blakely, who is the owner of Spanx.
Yeah.
And she said that they are celebrating their 20-year anniversary. And I got inspired by that because what else she wrote in her Instagram post was that in the beginning, she was told that she would never make it, that this is not something that people would ever buy. And I thought, how many other people get
Yeah.
told that? Right. And how many other entrepreneurs and how many people who have changed the face of industry or changed the face of media have been told that. And so I just wanted to put it out there and just show everybody in different aspects and with different people. And it reminded me also of an Instagram post that Sarah Rafferty, and she was Donna on Suits. She posted a stack, like I'm talking like a stack of audition papers. I don't know how long ago it was. I was trying to find the post, but she posted this stack and she was like, this is how many auditions I had to go through to get my dream job as Donna on Suits. And so just the two of them kind of inspired me to write this post about what's holding you back. What are people telling you? What's in your ear? What's in your head, right? What are you telling yourself that maybe is holding you back, that you could turn around and maybe use to motivate yourself? And so that's where this post came from. And so I listed a couple of people and what they went through. J.K. Rowling, Ariana Huffington got rejected by 36 publishers. I mean, the list could go on, right? There's a lot of these stories, and there's a lot of things that people have gone through and been told, but still persevered and was successful. So what did you think?
I thought it was really like such a great time too. I think the last couple of weeks, all the people I've been talking to, it's been a bit of another sort of slow down, or a sort of a lower mood kind of last week or 2 weeks. I think there's been just a lot going on for people, and people are facing some changing situations with regards to the pandemic or with their jobs. So I think this was a great post because it just kind of inspired people to think of like, what are the times when you've been sort of, you've had these naysayers come in and kind of try to make you feel down or try to discourage you, and where you kind of lifted yourself up, or you kind of said, no, like, this is my idea. This is what I'm going for. I've got my goal. I've got my dream. And it doesn't matter what these people say. And I know we've talked about it in the past, maybe not on Thoughts and Coffee, but how, there's people in your life, who it's like, it makes sense to listen to their, sort of advice, or to go to them for support and encouragement. And sometimes there's people where it just doesn't make sense. And there's a lot of people, when we talk, it was the Brene Brown we were talking about, Daring Greatly, where it's like you get this feedback from people, and they're trying to be helpful, and you're like, you're not being helpful. You're just trying to make yourself feel better and cut me down. And at some point, it's like, you can accept the support and encouragement advice from people, but if you're always doing that, it's like you're just going to get, all these different voices. And at some point, you sort of have to regroup yourself and figure out what it is that you're going for, and then find your sort of cheerleaders and the people who will actually support you. And I think this is such a good reminder of that. And there's so many great comments too about people, kind of, doing that, kind of reshuffling and being like, no, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to keep at it. And, some great stuff from like Scott Luton, Greg White.
Oh, yeah.
Who else?
And
I saw a couple
Allison.
people.
Yeah,
Allison is in
about
there.
imposter syndrome, and she's like, we really need to find a cure for that. And I'm like, I am for that. I am all for that. But one of the other points that I put on that post was progress, not perfection. That's something that it's a mantra that I've always kind of lived by. I mean, you can tell by the first episode of so the Let's Talk Supply Chain podcast, when it first started out, was called Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. Yeah. And the first episode was a nightmare. We did it on Skype. The bandwidth wasn't very good, but I think the video is still out there. And I can tell you, even if the audio is no good, like it's not very good on an episode, I will still release it. And it's actually those episodes that are the most listened to, which is crazy because the audio isn't the greatest, but it's such a good discussion and it brings so much value that I wanted to put it out there anyways. And so it doesn't have to be perfect every single time. And so I'm actually going to expand on that progress, not perfection, in my next Thoughts and Coffee post on Sunday. And Susan Walsh is here next week. And so her and I are going to be talking about that on the show coming up, which I'm excited about too.
It resonated for so many people. I mean, there were so many people who really echoed that sentiment, and I think we all struggle into that. And you can lose. I mean, I'll be very honest. You can lose opportunities by just focusing on it. You trying to create an outcome that has to be and look a certain way, and then you don't actually get anything done because you're procrastinating, and or so scared, that you end up blowing something, and that's all you. That isn't external. That isn't something else. That's like in your head, right? So we have to.
Yeah, I love this community. Sorry, I love this community because John and Davin, I think, are both trying to help Emiliano so that it doesn't say LinkedIn user while we're discussing this right now.
Face in the photo. Yeah. Oh,
Andre is going to
Andre's
use
again. It resonate here for Andre.
Yeah, he's going to use that in his meeting tomorrow. I love that. And then Chris is with us today. He's got his own show or a video that he puts out every once in a while as well about supply chain. So go and check that out. Hola, two babes. I know. I mean, it's part of my starting story. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing I could do about it, and I wouldn't change it for anything. And
No.
we were just really trying to push the envelope in the industry back in 2016, where everything was just so stuffy. And I was like, no, let's see what we can do with Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. I had a male co-host, and it was just kind of
It was
funny.
so fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was just
it was
very
fun.
different for what was out there. And
Yeah.
And now it's grown into this.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're someone like me who knows you and sees like all the work and effort and steps and follow up and lists and everything, then yeah, you could expect that, it would it would progress.
And so
if
guys,
you don't know, it's like surprise magic. Look at all the stuff that happened.
And so, guys, if you're helping Emiliano, there's somebody here as well that is looking for some help to figure out how it doesn't show LinkedIn user. Maybe we should do a whole Thoughts and Coffee around this.
Yeah. LinkedIn.
Davin, the humble beginnings of where you are now, something to be proud of. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you got to start somewhere, and that's what I mean, progress, not perfection. So let's get into the topics, because these are some pretty big ones, and I'm excited to show this one because this is the one I didn't get to with Sarah last week, Sarah Scudder. And
but what we did get was a ton of info.
Oh, we totally did. Yeah, last week's Thoughts and Coffee was awesome. Yeah. Yay, look at this. Look, it shows Emiliano. Yay. I'm so excited. So excited. All right. So this article is huge, right? Yeah. This is a big announcement because we're talking about supply chain strategies. We're talking about how people are looking at local versus global strategies. We're talking about how companies are looking to move out of China. Yes. And everybody was like, this isn't going to happen overnight. Some of the big ones, they're ingrained in China. Yeah. Well, this one kind of changes the game because this is about Apple moving manufacturing out of China and into India. And I don't know if you guys have heard this article or read this article before. We're going to have the article in the comments, obviously, so you can go and check it out. But this is pretty interesting because what they're saying is that China accounted for 90% of Apple's product factories in 2019. But because of COVID-19 and the China-US trade war, it's forced Apple to hedge its bets. And India right now has launched a $6.6 billion federal incentive scheme. And 3 of Apple manufacturing partners are among the 16 firms that are going to benefit from that plan. And so what do you think about that? And then I'll jump back in with some of the other benefits that they're looking to capitalize on.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, we've been hearing this like, oh, we need to reshore, change your manufacturers. Like, China's not playing by the trade rules. We need to make change. And I think a lot of it was kind of like, okay, that's it. We're going to go to this place. And, people, maybe people had their reasons, but they'd be suggesting like, let's go to Cambodia. Let's go to Vietnam. Let's do it here, but they maybe hadn't gotten the full perspective on what the situation is in those countries. So somewhere like Vietnam, China's a massive billion-person country who has spent the last 2 decades building up their manufacturing and building up their infrastructure. Vietnam has been building up their infrastructure, but not for like a bunch of billion-dollar companies to suddenly be like, we're going to come to you. What's your port like? Oh, as it turns out, it doesn't have that many cranes. Like, not a great, start off, right? Because, but India being like, turning on and kind of saying like, oh no, we want this business. You're like, well, India, again, massive, large population, lots of different variety of skilled workers. But if they decide to put some investment into it, they have the population, they have the money, they have some of that, they have that infrastructure already. So I think maybe some people were waiting for them to kind of to jump into this and kind of give some guidance that yes, we're ready and we want to go. So this kind of incentive too is massive. Like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah, I
Apple,
think
here's some money, right?
yeah, and I think we're going to be also watching this closely to see about transit times, right? Because in my previous experience, bringing out products out of India has actually taken twice as long.
It's so funny
Um,
because I literally just was looking this up the other day. I was
yeah,
literally looking up transit times from India, and it's long
yeah.
to get to New York.
Yeah.
And
Well, before I
so
get into the other part of this article, so this is another LinkedIn user. If you've been following along the comments, John has been helping everybody to be visible on LinkedIn. So if you're having trouble or you need some help with that, John has been helping everybody. And here is how you do that to make sure that you are visible on LinkedIn. And John helped Alia as well, which is great. Thanks, John and Davin. You guys are amazing. So let's talk a little bit further about this because they're also saying that Foxconn is moving. They've made relocation headlines. Wistron and Foxconn, I think, is what, PlayStation? I believe.
I
Anyways,
believe
I could
it's
be
the
wrong.
background of it.
Yeah, Wistron and Pegatron. But the other thing that they were saying about the benefits of moving to India is the retail market. So
Mm-hmm.
there are 1.35 billion people in India, more than half of whom still don't have smartphones.
Yeah.
So the country has a lot of room for growth. China's per capita GDP is 10.1 versus 2.2 for India. So, and Apple was just given permission to set up online stores in India as well. And so there's a lot of different benefits, right? We're all
Yeah.
talking about it from a supply chain and a manufacturing standpoint. But if we're taking a look at it holistically, there's a lot of different benefits by looking at the different markets. And, it's kind of what Zishan and I were talking about in the EDC podcast that I mentioned at the top of the show, is that take a look at new markets. And don't just take a look at them from a manufacturing perspective, but take a look at them as new markets of where you can sell your products. And so these companies are looking at it from both perspectives. They're looking at it from manufacturing, and then they're also looking at it from a retail perspective. So Chris just
it's Apple.
So it is Apple. Foxconn is Apple. I thought Foxconn had to do with PlayStation as well. I don't know. Anyways, I heard something about that. But no, really, really interesting discussion. I think we need to get on to the next one now. And we've talked about this before, you and I, seafarers.
Yes.
And how seafarers have really had the brunt of what we're going through, obviously, with lockdowns and COVID-19 and being stuck on vessels. But this comes from an interesting perspective. So this article talks about 3 leaders in the shipping industry, more on the maritime side, and they talk about what we need more in supply chain right now. One of them is that the shipping industry needs more recognition. I don't think there's anybody in this audience that's going to disagree with that. I think we've had some recognition through all of COVID-19, but I think we need some more recognition because trade has not stopped. There have been lockdowns, there have been, border closures, and trade has not shut down. We have kept it moving. The shipping industry, the maritime industry, the truckers, everybody collectively as a whole has kept it moving. Then they're talking about ship managers have a fundamental duty to their seafarers, which is what you and I have been talking about, because there's 200,000 seafarers stranded at sea right now, and they cannot get home because of border closures. And it's a huge topic, and we need to come together for that. And then lastly, before I let you sort of talk about this, Audrey, is that there's a need for collective lobbying voice. So what they're saying is it doesn't necessarily need to be one person, one organization. There needs to be a collective voice within the industry that is really getting behind trade and pushing the importance and what we've done for consumers and what we've done for economies, during this time. So, Audrey, this is a lot to unpack, but what do you think?
I think it's a great article. I think it really goes over kind of what the issue has been and where a lot of the ship management companies have sort of been collaborating as well. It's actually been interesting this year to see some of these companies who are competitors, um, actually kind of coming together and trying to find a solution. And these are also companies that not everything gets, they're not the apples of the world. They don't have like reporters following them around on all these stories. So sometimes, unless you're following some of the key publications in our industry, you're not really seeing all the work that has been going into it, because initially the seafarers thing just felt like no one was paying attention, no one was doing anything.
Yeah.
And we kind of had come to discover that it's like, no, each of the carriers was trying to work their angle. You had the IMO was trying to work their angle. It sort of came to the realization that it wasn't necessarily the shipping companies who were keeping them on the vessels. It was that there were a lot of repatriation and immigration issues, and that's directly with a foreign government or a country's government. So Canada, U.S., Australia, getting back into Indonesia, Singapore, all of these, China, Japan, all these hubs where kind of workers are loading and offloading,
Yeah.
or embarking and disembarking if you're a person, I guess.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was this hot issue, and they're right though. Like you did kind of expect that there'd be like someone would kind of have the lead voice on this. And what this article is kind of suggesting is that it can't necessarily just be the IMO pushing for this.
Yeah.
It really does need to be a couple of different supporting groups. But it really involves such a, it just is stunning the amount of people who are involved in this one labor group or one kind of function of our world. Like, it is fascinating to see who, like, oh, it was actually 50 people are involved in trying to make a decision on this.
Yeah.
I think overall, though, it has traditionally been an industry where the working conditions for some of these jobs are not great. And these are, it can be a good job, because of the pay or the situation that you're in, why you would take this job. But the reality is, for most of them, it's cramped quarters. You're
Yeah.
away from home for, I mean, absolutely months at a time. And then COVID expanded that to be, it's almost a year for some of them that haven't been at home at all. And
Hmm.
they haven't really facilitated, things like Wi-Fi. So like we're assuming like, oh, you're on the ship and then it's like you call home or you talk to, it's like, no, they don't
Yeah.
really have access to that. So there actually has been a few groups too over the last, couple of decades, just for the mental health of these employees and workers, saying that like there's just really no coping strategies for them. There's no external support for them. So they actually have a lot of cases of depression and like even leading to suicide. So that's not acceptable in any industry.
Yeah.
And so I think
Especially
bring us, yeah, when you're stuck out at sea with, who do you talk to? Who are you kind of like, hey, like I'm stuck out here and I'm by myself.
yeah.
So I think any way that we can bring attention to this and just improve some of the conditions. It's like, I wouldn't want to go to work like that. I
No.
wouldn't want other people going to work like that. And they are absolutely, there was no shutdown for them. There was no stop in international trade. There were gaps. It's been slower, due to some new protocols, but the fact that it hasn't actually completely stopped is just absolutely amazing. So,
Yeah.
you know,
So I encourage everybody to go and check out this article. It gives
mhm.
us some suggestions on how we can
Great
help.
ones. Yeah.
There are a few, I think there's a change.org for seafarers as well. So if you go
Yeah.
onto change.org and type in seafarers, that should come up as well. We don't have a lot of time to get to our last article because that one, I felt like that one really needed its time. We'll touch on it
Yeah.
really quickly.
Yes.
A couple of weeks ago, we spoke about how there was some countries that were coming together. I believe Singapore was one of them. Now, Japan, Australia, and India are coming together to launch supply chain initiatives. And Audrey was talking a little bit about it earlier before we went live on how this is a big deal for India because India doesn't usually get involved in talks and treaties like these, or just
Yeah.
the
This is,
getting
it's
together
kind of
around
new.
supply chain.
It's kind
Yeah,
of new, the pushback against China. I think it's what the US was hoping would happen like 5 or 7 years ago, um, would be to kind of, come together as allies and sort of try to combat some of the dominance that China has in the market and in the economy, I guess. Um, so yeah,
yeah,
so this is fascinating. I think there was this really interesting little tidbit though, where it's like, so it's Japan, Australia, and India have been in these talks. They're already part of something called the Quad. Um, so the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, and which is apparently a loose grouping national security consultation. And so apparently there's this little tidbit that a senior U.S. diplomat is suggesting that the U.S. might like to start formalizing the Quad as a base for broader security alliance.
Huh.
So that could be very interesting in the next coming years of them formalizing this sort of strategy.
Awesome. Well, we have the article in the comments. We will post it also in the actual post itself as well, so you can go and check it out. Thank you to everybody for joining me and Audrey today. Thank you, Audrey, for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
We will see you next Tuesday on Thoughts and Coffee with Susan Walsh, and we hope you guys have an amazing week ahead.
Yay.